I'm Craig Packer. I'm a professor in the ecology department at the University of Minnesota in St. Paul. And for most of my life, I've done research in Africa on large mammals. Initially, I worked with Jane Goodall on monkeys and apes in Tanzania. I then worked in the Serengeti, also in Tanzania, on African lions for many, many years. And for the last few years, I've been working more in Southern Africa, in Namibia and Botswana and South Africa itself. When I was closer to your age, I really thought it would be great to be a scientist of some sort and somehow to be able to work outdoors. And I spent my summers in a very small town in West Texas, in a town, you might not believe it, but it's actually called Noodle, Texas, population 7. But my grandmother had a farm a few miles away from Noodle, and I used to spend my summers just sort of helping around the farm, being kind of a country boy. And so I just really loved the idea of there being something I could do that would be connected to the outdoors. And at the time, I had never heard of ecology. I certainly didn't know that people could study animals. And it wasn't until I was an undergraduate at university that I even found out that you could actually go to Africa. And there was an amazing day, I think it was my sophomore year, junior year, somewhere in there, in college, where I was taking an introductory biology class. And the professor came up and said, well, we've got this new deal where you can go to Africa and work as a field assistant if you'd like. And so I thought, oh, that'd be fun. And so I did. And when I got over there, I just thought, this is amazing. And I'd always been interested in evolution. And so by the time I got over there, there was a new field of biology, which we now call behavioral ecology. And it really says, okay, you see an animal doing something. Why? Why is it doing it? When we ask why the animal is behaving in a certain way, we're actually asking, how does it benefit? Does it get more offspring? Is it more likely to survive? What's the sort of fitness, in the sense of Darwin, from that behavior? And I just thought it was so amazing. This allowed me to work outside in an area that I found intellectually really appealing, and just kept going. So when I was at Gombe and I was working on the baboons, I noticed on rare occasions a couple of baboons, and these are large monkeys with big teeth, and they're usually very competitive with each other and very hostile. But every now and then, a couple of individuals would team up and they would cooperate against another. And it's like, oh, wow, cooperation. That's kind of rare in animals. And so one of the first papers I ever wrote was about the circumstances where these male baboons would cooperate. And then I had some friends in Tanzania as well, the same country in Africa, and they were studying lions, but they're coming to the end of their grants, and they thought they should probably let people know that there would be an opportunity to take over the study of lions. And the thing about lions that we all know, right, is that unlike tigers and leopards and pumas and jaguars, they're very sociable. And so they live in social groups called prides. And it's like, whoa, wait, how could that happen? So cooperation is something that's been of great interest to evolutionary biologists, including Darwin, because his views seem to say that you should always be fighting red in tooth and claw, and it's all selfish and all that. But you do see examples like ants and bees and things where there's enormous cooperation. So here was a cat, unlike all the other cats that cooperated. And so my initial interest in lions is, why are they so cooperative? What makes them special that they should cooperate with each other? You got these females forming these prides. They would even nurse each other's babies. They would hunt things together. And you have the males who form a coalition, and they sort of do their battles against other males in groups. And so that was really, really cool. It ended up being about 16 years of my research on the lions is all about those kinds of questions. But in 1994, suddenly we had a catastrophe. Suddenly there was this disease outbreak, and it killed about 40% of the lion population in the Serengeti. And so at that point, it's like, whoa, we need to be thinking not just about our rarefied questions of theoretical interest, but wait a minute, this is a species that is really vulnerable. And so, beginning in the 1990s, and for the following 20 odd years, I was working in the Serengeti, we got more and more interested in things that were relevant to their conservation. We hear about species like rhino, and they're very endangered. Well, the best guess is that there's actually fewer lions left in Africa than there are rhinos. Yeah, for that particular book, I wrote that in about 1990, and I was being kind of the chaperone for a couple of field assistants that came from England to do the day-to-day monitoring of the lions. So driving out each day, doing the radio tracking, seeing where the lions were, noting down who's there, what they're eating, all this sort of stuff that's the basis for that long-term study. And so as I was explaining everything to them, it sort of said, oh yeah, this is the sort of thing that, if my own kids were here, this is the sort of thing that they might be interested in knowing what their parents used to do, right? I really should write all this down before I forget it. I started keeping a ledger or a diary at that point. The book reads like a day-to-day account of, you were there learning how to go look for lions with me, and seeing them for the first time, and what you do when you get stuck in the mud and all that sort of stuff. And so it's all kind of good fun, really, in a moment-to-moment basis. So I just wanted to capture all of that. So that was that particular book. I wrote a second book, Lions in the Balance. I'd started doing all that conservation work, and some of the conservation work is really frustrating because often conservationists come up against the kinds of pressures from business interests. And so one of the things that I was interested in trying to conserve lions was looking at the impacts of sport hunting or trophy hunting. And trophy hunting is a very controversial topic, and I was just trying to look at it, objectively. So that second book is just like, well, this is the problem. Here we are, and it's all complicated, and it's frustrating because people don't always do the right thing for the future of wildlife and conservation. I mean, what I've emphasized really is the fun, adventurous side, but to keep doing that, I mean, I was in the Serengeti for 37 years. To keep going that long, I had to do a lot of hard work. And so you have to write grant proposals, and the grant proposals are in competition against other people's grant proposals. And you have to have a compelling question that people will give you the funding rather than somebody else. You also, if you're a scientist and you're an academic like I am, that old slogan of publish or perish is true. And so, I actually like writing it up. I kind of wrote those two books on the side, but in the meantime, I was writing a lot of scientific papers. But that's a lot of work. And so it helps when you're going to have to work really hard if you really care. So when people say find your passion, I mean, what they're really saying is find something that you'll be willing to really dig in, right? And work hard with month after month, year after year. And then you do kind of make your own luck. It's a commitment and a focus that just really helps if it just happens to be something that like, yeah, I want to do this. A typical day there for when I would be in the Serengeti is I had a graduate student or two who got some research question that she is trying to answer. And I would have a couple of research assistants who would be going out finding the lions every day. They would have headphones on, and they've got an antenna on the car so they could drive up to the lions, and they would say what they're eating, if there was mating, who was mating with whom, if there was some new babies there, who the mother was of the cubs, that sort of stuff, and where they are on the map. And so the graduate student, we had a camera trap grid, the Snapshot Serengeti grid. And so she would be going out to make sure all the cameras are working, putting everything into a database. So that'd be kind of a field day. When I'm back in Minnesota, I do all of my undergraduate teaching in the fall semester. I was an early adopter of what's called a flipped classroom. I would give a lecture, but it was on video. And so the videos are now broken up into little chunks and they're online. And so before people come to class, they would watch, a segment of the lecture, and then there'd be a little quiz about what they'd seen so far, and then watch the next segment go on, da-da-da-da. And then they got to class, we'd talk. And it would all be some activities we might give them to do that give them a chance to sort of better understand the concepts that were in the taped lectures. And so it's all very interactive. And then my graduate students, they work with undergraduates who will help them with some of the data that they're analyzing. And so I mentioned we have this camera trap grid, Snapshot Serengeti, which has now grown. And I think we've got like 40 different camera trap grids around Africa. And so you can go online. If you go to snapshotsafari.org, if you click on a particular site, then you can get at random a photograph that was taken by a camera trap from that particular park or reserve. And then you tell us what it was. Was it a wildebeest? Was it a lion, giraffe, zebra? And then how many of them were there? And that information actually gives us a sense, because we've got a grid of cameras set out like in a checkerboard over a big area. And through time, we can actually estimate, well, how many giraffe are there in this reserve? How many zebra are there? And so this is something that can help the managers to learn whether their conservation strategies are working. And so the snapshot safari is a way that anyone, anywhere, anytime, can go on and help us to see how well the animals are faring in these different reserves. And so some of my undergraduates then here are taking all those classifications that the citizen scientists made online and sort of assembling them, putting them into a computer model so that they can make those kinds of statistical inferences about the health of the population. Well, I think if you could get excited by watching bugs or birds, something that you can do here, and you can get excited by that, then that's really much easier to do. And there's so many more things to know. I mean, there's so many different species of insect. There's so many species of amphibia. There's so many things that we still have. And you don't know where you end up, but if you just find yourself interested in some sort of organism, then that's a good way to get started, or to know that's something you should do. And for a student now, it could be anything, it's just whatever really gets you going. The one advice I give to undergraduates at the University of Minnesota, I will say this, is volunteer in a lab. And I've had high school students actually come and work in our Lion Center. So, if wherever you are, you have an opportunity to spend time in a research lab, and it could be on anything. Once you get to college, again, just get out there, connect. Because if you see what it's like and what people are doing, then that might be the turn on you need, to tell you where you want to go with something. It's kind of an apprenticeship, right? And so just see if you can connect with any kind of activity at a college or university, even when you're still in high school, and then see where that might lead you.